The bitter wind of Christmas Eve sliced through my jacket as I stepped out of the cab, staring up at the house on Pine Ridge Lane. Light sparkled on the hedges, a wreath hung neatly on the door, and golden warmth spilled from the windows. But none of it warmed the hollow pit in my stomach. I held my phone, still warm from the call. "Come to your parents' new place," Grandpa had said. "I've got something special to share." His voice had a spark I hadn't heard in years, like he was about to give me the world. Grandpa Ellis was a man who didn't waste words, a self-made contractor who built half of downtown Chicago. He rarely visited Ohio, too busy with blueprints and bids, and yet tonight he was here at my father's house on Christmas Eve. The moment I stepped through the door, heat and the scent of roasted turkey wrapped around me, the kind of welcome most people might find comforting, not me. Because this wasn't my house, it never had been. Grandpa stood in the dining room, his tall frame commanding even in old age. His eyes sparkled when he saw me. "Landon," he said, pulling me into a firm hug. The smell of his cedar cologne hit me like a wave of childhood memories. For the first time all week, I smiled. He stepped back, gesturing around the room. "What do you think of the place?" I blinked, unsure what he meant. "It's nice, it's my parents' house." And in that instant the warmth of the room turned ice cold. Grandpa's eyes darted to my father, Marcus, who stood by the fireplace, holding a glass of wine. He paled visibly, his hand trembling. My stepmother, Claudia, gave a nervous laugh, brushing invisible lint from her designer dress. "Oh, it's just the family home," she said quickly. "We all share it, really." But Grandpa wasn't looking at her. He was staring straight at me. "Landon, what do you mean it's your parents' house?" I shifted uneasily. "Well, I don't live here, Grandpa. I rent a small place across town. This is their home." A silence fell that seemed to stretch forever. You could hear the clock ticking above the mantel. My father stared into his glass. Claudia cleared her throat. "It's just that Landon prefers his independence, right, dear?" She flashed me a tight smile, her eyes begging me to go along, but I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The look on Grandpa's face said it all. Shock, betrayal, realization. "My name is Landon Price," I should have said then, but the truth would come later. Right now I was just the shadow at the edge of a family portrait, standing under a roof I was never meant to call mine, because what I didn't know, what none of us had said out loud yet, was that this house was never meant for them. It was meant for me, and the truth that unraveled that Christmas Eve would change everything. Growing up in Ohio was like living in a snow globe, quiet, picture-perfect from the outside, but inside my world was a fog of half-spoken truths and cold dinners. I wasn't the golden child. That title belonged to my younger stepbrother, Evan. I was the reminder, the leftover, the son from my dad's first marriage, a chapter he rarely acknowledged. My mother, Elise, died just days after I was born. Complications during delivery, they said. I never got to know her, only the silence she left behind. My father, Marcus, was never the same. He remarried when I was 3. Claudia swept in with a perfect smile, polished nails, and a heart that seemed made of ice. When Evan was born a year later, the balance was set. I was the spare, he was the heir. I remember one birthday, my 8th, I think. Evan unwrapped a brand new mountain bike with bright red handlebars and training wheels shaped like fireballs. I got a used puzzle set, missing 4 pieces. My dad patted me on the head and said, "Life's about appreciating what you have." That became the theme of my life. Evan had every opportunity: private tutors, music lessons, karate. I got a stack of old textbooks and lectures about hard work. When I got straight A's, Dad barely looked up from his newspaper. But when Evan passed algebra with a C, the whole house celebrated with pizza and balloons. Claudia always made it worse. "You should be more like Evan," she'd say with a strained smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He's going places." I wasn't jealous. I was tired of being reminded that I didn't belong. I slept in a drafty attic room, while Evan had a spacious suite with posters, LED lights and a flat-screen TV. When I asked to move into the guest room downstairs, my dad barked, "Be grateful you have a roof at all." So I stopped asking, stopped expecting. I learned to live quietly, do my chores, keep my head down, smile when spoken to. I became a master at staying invisible. But no matter how hard I tried, one person always saw me: Grandpa Ellis. He didn't visit much. His business in Chicago consumed most of his time, but he called. He asked about school, about books I was reading, about whether I liked the guitar he sent one Christmas. "I see your mother in you," he told me once. Strong, thoughtful, quiet, but never weak. Never that. I never told him how I really lived. I was too ashamed. I didn't want to sound like I was begging for sympathy, and yet Grandpa was the only adult who ever made me feel like I mattered. I worked through high school, started as a bag boy at a grocery store, then moved into stocking shelves overnight. I saved every dollar, dreaming of college, of becoming an engineer like the ones who built cities. But when I turned 18, that dream crumbled. Dad told me they couldn't help me pay for school. "We've got to focus on Evan's future," he said flatly. "You'll have to figure things out on your own." So I did. I rented a tiny one-room apartment with peeling paint and mold in the bathroom. I worked nights, studied when I could, and scraped by. Sometimes I thought about Grandpa's calls and wondered if I should reach out, tell him the truth. But something always stopped me. Fear, pride, maybe both. Meanwhile, Claudia and Marcus were busy remodeling the kitchen, buying Evan a car, and throwing garden parties for neighbors. They had everything, and I had silence. But the thing about silence is, it doesn't last forever, because eventually someone starts asking questions, and on that Christmas Eve, standing in the home meant for me, Grandpa Ellis was finally asking them. In the days following that Christmas Eve, everything around me seemed to resume its usual rhythm, on the surface at least. No one mentioned the awkward silence, Grandpa's sharp questions, or the cold glares exchanged at the dinner table, but something had changed. A line had been crossed, and strangely, that's when the invitations began. For years I had been the forgotten one, barely acknowledged on holidays. But now, every time there was an occasion, Thanksgiving, Evan's birthday, even their wedding anniversary, I got a message, usually short and sterile: "Dinner at 6, be on time, Evan wants you there," or "Don't forget to bring a dish, family only." At first I thought maybe something had shifted. Maybe Dad and Claudia were trying in their own stiff, robotic way to include me. I started showing up, always with a small gift, usually something handmade or modest, a framed photo, a bottle of wine, even a monogrammed handkerchief I spent my last few dollars on, and every time the gift was set aside. No thanks, no unwrapping, just a polite nod and a return to whatever conversation they found more interesting. But the strangest thing, they started taking more pictures. Group photos after dinner, me standing next to Evan, sometimes just me and Dad. Once Claudia pulled me aside and placed a hand on my shoulder, guiding me into a shot with all three of them. "Smile, Landon," she said, her teeth perfectly white but her eyes cold as stone. At first I didn't question it, but then I started noticing something odd. These photos weren't just for the album, they were displayed, posted, framed on the mantel, a family image that never existed. They were curating a version of us that looked normal, like I was just another happy son in a happy home, and deep down I knew why. It wasn't about me, it was about optics. For Grandpa, they wanted him to believe everything was fine, that the house he thought he gifted to me was in fact being used to build a united family, that I was living there, cared for, thriving. I realized, with a sick twist in my gut, that every dinner invitation wasn't about connection, it was about performance. I was being propped up like a stage prop in a carefully staged play, the smiling, grateful son, the one who had no idea his inheritance had been stolen right from under him. I thought about confronting Dad, but every time I opened my mouth, something held me back. Maybe fear, maybe hope that deep down there was still some humanity in him, some chance he would come clean on his own. He never did, so I kept showing up, kept smiling for the camera. But in the back of my mind, the truth festered like an open wound, and eventually that wound would split open. All it took was one unexpected guest, and one innocent question. That winter, Christmas rolled in like it always did in Ohio, blanketing the streets in thick snow and forcing people to stay inside, huddled around fireplaces, and pretending life was simpler than it really was. I was working a short shift that day at the store, just enough hours to pay rent and maybe splurge on a decent meal. My plan was to swing by Dad and Claudia's after dinner, show my face, take a photo, and slip away unnoticed. I had no intention of staying long. Then my phone rang. I pulled it from my coat pocket, expecting a text from work or a last-minute invitation reminder, but it was a call from Grandpa Ellis. "Landon," he said, his voice alive with excitement, "I'm in town. I thought I'd surprise the family. I stopped in my tracks. You're here? At the house? The new one, Hollow Ridge. Just got in a few minutes ago. Everyone looks so happy. You're still living here, right? My breath caught. I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. I'll be right there, I said, already turning back toward my car. The roads were slick and silent as I drove. My heart pounded with every turn of the wheel. I hadn't known he was coming. No one had mentioned it, which meant Dad and Claudia had no idea either. By the time I reached the driveway, the house was glowing in full holiday splendor, wreath on the door, garland in the windows, and the Christmas tree twinkling like a magazine ad. Claudia opened the door, her expression faltering the moment she saw me. "Landon, what are you, Dorian? Come on in, my boy." Grandpa's voice rang from inside, cheerful and booming. I stepped into the warmth of the living room, and there he was, tall, silver-haired, wearing his old wool coat and a wide grin that made him look younger than he was. He embraced me like a man who hadn't seen his grandson in years. Surprise visit. I wanted to see the place in person. This house, it's incredible. You're lucky to live here, kiddo. I hesitated, and in that pause, something shifted in Grandpa's eyes. "You do live here, right?" he asked, his voice suddenly cautious. Claudia was behind him, her face pale, lips tight. "I don't," I said slowly, the words coming out heavier than I expected. "I live in a small apartment across town. Been there since I turned 18. The silence that followed was so deep, I swear the clock stopped ticking. Grandpa turned to Dad, who stood at the fireplace holding a glass of wine. "Marcus," Grandpa said slowly, "2 years ago I wired you $400,000. I told you that money was for Landon, for his future, for a house. This house." Claudia stepped in quickly. "Will, you must be confused." "Confused," he snapped, turning on her with a look that could freeze fire. "You've been sending me staged photos, making it look like Landon lives here, like this was his home." Dad's voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. We thought it would be better this way. Landon's always been independent. Evan needed stability, the space. He needed a house paid for with someone else's money." Grandpa said, his tone now ice. Then he looked at me. "Did you know, Landon? Did you know what I gave him?" I shook my head. The weight of betrayal settled into my chest like wet concrete. "You took the house," Grandpa said, his voice trembling now with rage and something deeper, disappointment. "You stole your own son's future." Dad said nothing. Claudia began to cry. But I couldn't look at either of them, because the truth wasn't just ugly, it was unforgivable. The silence that followed Grandpa's outburst wasn't just awkward, it was suffocating. Claudia stood frozen, clutching the hem of her sweater, like it might keep her grounded. Dad stared into his wine glass, as if it could offer a way out. Grandpa turned to me again. "Get your things, Landon. You're coming with me tonight." My voice caught in my throat. "Tonight? Yes, right now. You're not spending another second in a house that was stolen from you." Claudia finally found her voice. "Will, you're overreacting. We're still a family. This house was supposed to be Landon's," Grandpa thundered. "That money was his. That life was his. You both took that from him and smiled through it, like it was a Christmas miracle." Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked older in that moment, tired, cracked, small. "I only did what I thought was best," he muttered. "For whom?" Grandpa snapped. I stood there, still in my coat, the cold from outside still clinging to me. I felt like I was watching a stranger's life unfold. This house, the one with the fancy staircase and polished floors, the one I had smiled in front of like a ghost in a portrait, it was mine, and I had never even known. Grandpa didn't wait for a response. He took my hand, firm as ever, and said, "Let's go." As we walked out, I glanced one last time at the decorated living room, at the tree with all the ornaments, the untouched gifts stacked perfectly beneath it, at my father, no, Marcus, still standing like a statue, at Claudia, who finally sat down and buried her face in her hands. No one followed us. The door closed behind me with a quiet click. Outside, the SUV was waiting. Grandpa's driver, James, opened the back door without a word. I slid in, clutching the strap of my bag like a lifeline. "Where are we going?" I asked quietly. "Hotel tonight," Grandpa said. "And then Chicago. I should have brought you with me years ago." I stared out the window as the car pulled away. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared completely behind a veil of snow and distance. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving behind a lie, and I was heading towards something real, something I had never been given before, a chance. The hotel room that night was quiet, too quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed, still clutching the duffel bag that held my life's possessions. 2 shirts, a faded hoodie, and a spiral notebook filled with dreams I had long shelved. Across the room, Grandpa sat in an armchair, his reading glasses perched on the tip of his nose as he scrolled through his phone. "You okay?" he asked, finally looking up. I nodded, though my throat was dry. "I think so. You don't have to pretend with me, son. Not anymore." He said it gently, but it hit me hard. I had spent my entire life pretending I wasn't angry, pretending I didn't want more, pretending I didn't care. "I just don't get it," I said. "How did they hide this from you? All those photos, all those years." "They played a long game," Grandpa said bitterly, "and I was too trusting. I thought Marcus was doing right by you. I didn't want to meddle." He leaned forward, taking off his glasses. "That's on me, but I swear to you, Landon, I'm not going to sit back anymore." The next morning, we flew to Chicago. As the plane soared above the clouds, I looked out the window and watched the world shift beneath me. Ohio, its memories, its shadows grew smaller with each passing second. When we landed, the city welcomed us with open arms. Skyscrapers stretched toward the sky like steel giants, and every corner pulsed with energy. It was overwhelming and exhilarating. Grandpa's house wasn't a house at all. It was a mansion, nestled in a quiet, upscale neighborhood with winding roads and historic trees. It looked like something out of a movie. I followed him through the iron gate and up the wide stone steps, my heart pounding with disbelief. Inside, the foyer gleamed with polished marble, a grand staircase curved upward, and a chandelier bathed the room in golden light. "This is your home now," Grandpa said. "No strings, no conditions, just a place to start fresh." I walked through the rooms in awe. Every detail, the artwork, the library, the fireplace, was warm and welcoming in a way I had never known. He showed me to a bedroom that was twice the size of my old apartment, with a desk, a fresh set of clothes, and even a brand new laptop. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just know this, whatever happens from here, you're not alone anymore." That night, I sat by the fireplace with a cup of tea, wrapped in a thick blanket, still trying to process the shift in my life. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into someone else's dream, but it was mine now, and I wasn't going to waste it. Grandpa didn't waste time. On the second morning in Chicago, he handed me a crisp button-down shirt and said, "You're coming with me to the office." The office? I blinked, still halfway through my cereal. "You're not going to sit around in pajamas for the rest of your life, are you?" I smiled. "Guess not." His company, Marston & Stone Construction, was based in a towering glass building downtown. Everything felt larger than life. The elevators whispered, the halls echoed with confidence, and every employee seemed to carry a purpose in their stride. "This," Grandpa said, waving his hand toward the buzzing floor of planners, architects and engineers, "is what I've built over 40 years, and one day I want it to be yours." I nearly choked. "Mine. Not today, not next year, but if you're willing to learn, I'll teach you." And so began my crash course in everything from foundation layouts to permit negotiations. I started as an assistant in the planning department, printing blueprints, organizing reports, fetching coffee, and worked my way up slowly, absorbing everything like a sponge. I was just a kid from Ohio, but here people started treating me like I belonged, not because I was the boss's grandson, but because I earned it. After work, Grandpa and I would have long dinners, talking business, life, and sometimes my mother. He told me stories I had never heard, about how she used to ride around construction sites as a child, how she loved architecture, how she once dreamed of designing homes that felt like stories, not just shelters. "You've got her eyes," he said one evening, "and her quiet fire." His words stayed with me. Chicago became my classroom. I walked every block with curiosity, read books on engineering, and took online courses late into the night. The mansion felt less intimidating now, more like a launch pad than a shrine. But even with all the growth, the wounds of the past weren't fully healed. Some nights I would find myself staring at the wall, remembering the old attic, Susan's fake smile, Marcus's cold stare, the housewarming party I was never truly part of. Then I'd remember that moment Grandpa said, "Let's go." and it gave me peace, because no matter what they had taken from me, I had built something bigger, and I wasn't done yet. It was early spring in Chicago, one of those crisp mornings where the sunlight bounces off the lake and makes the city feel like it's made of glass and hope. I had just wrapped up my first full project with the planning team, a small community center for an underserved neighborhood on the south side. It wasn't a major build, but it felt monumental to me. I had stood in front of that blueprint like it was my own name written in concrete. I was starting to believe I belonged. Then one morning, as I walked into the mansion's kitchen, James handed me a thick white envelope. My name was written in sharp, deliberate handwriting. No return address, but I recognized it immediately. It was from Marcus. I didn't open it right away. I stood by the window, turning it over in my hands. The paper smelled faintly of cheap cologne and desperation. Grandpa was out meeting with a client, so I had the house to myself. I sat at the oak dining table, exhaled, and finally tore it open. It wasn't long, just a single page. Landon, I know I have no right to write to you, but I'm asking anyway. Things have fallen apart. Susan left 2 months ago. Ben's dropped out of college. I lost my job. We're being evicted from the apartment. There's nothing left. I know I made mistakes. I told myself I was doing what was best for the family, but I see now that I just didn't want to let go of the life I thought I deserved. I'm not asking for much. I just need help. Any help. Even a small loan to keep the lights on. I'm not proud of what I did. I failed you. I failed your mother. I just hope one day you might find a way to forgive me. Marcus. I read it 3 times. I thought I'd feel anger, fury, some cathartic wave of satisfaction that he was finally paying the price for what he'd done. But all I felt was empty, because this wasn't about revenge, not anymore. I brought the letter to Grandpa that night. He read it in silence, then set it on the table. "You're not obligated to do anything," he said. "Don't let guilt undo what you've built." I nodded. "I know," and I did. I didn't respond to the letter, because I had spent my whole life fighting to feel seen by a man who had always looked through me. Now he had to look in the mirror and face what he'd become. Summer arrived with the kind of warmth that melts even the hardest memories. I was deep into my second year of college, now juggling classes in structural engineering and part-time responsibilities at Marston & Stone. My life had become a strange harmony of calculations, project timelines, and late-night walks along Lake Michigan with Emma, the girl who slowly turned from classmate to confidante. One Friday evening, as I closed my laptop after finalizing a site report, Grandpa knocked on my door. "You've got a visitor," he said, looking more confused than concerned. "A visitor?" I came downstairs, and through the wide foyer windows, I saw someone waiting at the gate. It was Ben. He looked nothing like the smug younger brother I remembered. His hoodie was torn at the sleeves, shoes scuffed, his once perfect hair now a tangled mop. He looked small, not in size, in presence. "I didn't come to cause trouble," he said quickly as I stepped outside. I didn't know where else to go." "What do you want, Ben?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I heard you're in college, that you work with Grandpa. I'm not here to ask for money, Landon. I swear. His voice cracked. I messed up. I folded my arms, unsure of what to say. He continued. "After Mum left and Dad lost the job, everything spiraled. I tried working. I really did. But I couldn't keep anything. I was never taught how to handle life. Everything I had was given to me, and when it was gone, I didn't know who I was. For the first time in my life, I believed he was being honest. I'm not asking for a place to stay," he added quickly. "I just need someone to tell me what to do, how to start. I want to be someone better, like you." The words stung, but not in a bad way. "Like me," he nodded. I sighed. "You need to understand something. I built this life because no one ever handed me anything. I worked minimum wage, slept in moldy apartments, ate cheap instant noodles for years, and all while you were being called the future of the family. I know," he whispered, "and I'm sorry." There it was, the apology I never thought I'd hear. I didn't hug him, I didn't invite him in, but I said, "If you really want to change, enroll in a community college, start part-time, learn a trade. There's dignity in building something from the ground up. I won't give you a shortcut, but I'll tell you this. If you work, really work, you'll earn something no one can take from you. Pride." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you," he said, and walked away. That night, I sat by the fireplace with Grandpa, the letter from Marcus still tucked away in my desk drawer, Ben's words echoing in my mind. Maybe some wounds never fully heal, but some cycles can break, and sometimes that's enough. A few months later, during the golden lull between fall and winter, I found myself back in Ohio, not for family, not for forgiveness, but for closure. The Hollow Creek house, the one Marcus and Susan once flaunted as a symbol of status, had finally gone up for public auction. After their financial collapse and missed rent payments, the legal system had taken its course. I wasn't there to bid or buy it back. Grandpa had already helped me start a new chapter in Chicago, but I wanted to see it one last time, the place that was supposed to be mine, the one that once symbolized everything I'd been denied. It was empty now. Windows shuttered, lawn overgrown. The FO sale sign leaned to the side like a relic from a forgotten war. I stood at the curb for a long while, hands in my coat pockets, watching the wind rustle through the dead leaves along the sidewalk. A memory flickered of a Christmas night, a living room full of strangers, a camera clicking while I stood awkwardly at the edge of a fake family portrait. I smiled, not with bitterness but peace. That house was never mine. What I had now, my life, my future, my worth, I had built with my own hands. As I turned to leave, a car pulled up. It was Susan. Older, thinner, her once perfect curls now tucked under a worn wool cap. She didn't get out of the car, just sat behind the wheel and stared at me through the windshield. Maybe she wanted to say something. Maybe she just wanted me to see how far they'd fallen. I nodded politely and walked away. Back in Chicago, the days moved forward. I graduated with honors in civil engineering. Emma and I started dating seriously, our shared laughter filling the spaces where old pain used to live. Grandpa eventually passed me the reins to oversee a mid-sized project, a hospital expansion in the suburbs. My name was finally on blueprints, on something real, something that would last. Years from now, no one would know about the attic room I once slept in, or the father who tried to erase me, but they'd know the name Landon Westfield, because I refused to disappear.